confirm the statements in Shastra that Brahmana may become a Kshatriya may become a Brahmana or Vaishya, and Vaishya may become a Brahmana by achieving the required qualities. One's status does not depend upon birth, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.11.35, Bernard, Yasya lakshanam praktam pumsava nabhivyam jakam vada anyatrapi drishyeta tatteneva vinyaset. Quote, if one shows the symptoms of being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, when he has appeared in a different class, he should be accepted according to those symptoms of classification. To know who is a Brahmana and who is a Kshatriya, one must consider man's quality and work. If all the unqualified Shudras become so-called Brahmanas and Kshatriya, social order will be impossible to maintain. Thus, there will be discrepancies. Human society will turn into a society of animals, and the situation all over the world will be hellish. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Founder Acharya Jagat Guru Ki.
Yay.
So, replacing the context, here we have the story of Vishvamitra beginning. So Vishvamitra's story is well known as it is described in the Ramayana, how he came from Raja to Rajarshi to Brahmarshi position. He did 10,000 years of penances to achieve this position. So, to be determined to such an extent, Samodama Tapa Socha. So, Tapa is actually a divine quality when it's engaged properly. Because Hiranyakashipu was also able to do a lot of tapasya. Yet he may have this divine quality, yet this divine quality was not engaged for a divine purpose. Similarly, Vishvamitra has a divine quality of determination. He can do a lot of penances, but he is actually interested to attain the position of a Brahmana. He is interested to realize God as well. Therefore, he has a divine purpose. So Vishvamitra here is presented as an example of someone who came from a Kshatriya background, went up to become a Brahmana. Actually, the story is as follows. It was narrated in the beginning of the chapter that Vishvamitra was born from a Brahmanical mantra, but from a Kshatriya background.
Who was?
Vishvamitra. So he's the husband. So the father of Jamanagni, which is the father of Parashram, imparted the Brahmana mantra into a special sutras, Ucharu it's called. And this oblation was taken by the mother of Vishvamitra, and from that Brahmana potency mixed with a dynasty of Kshatriya, Vishvamitra was born with two different propensities. Similarly, Parashuram was born with a Kshatriya mantra, but with the semen of a powerful member of the Brahmana dynasty. So in him also resided two propensities, Kshatriya and Brahmana. Yet in Parashuram, even though he was born with the sanskar and mantra of a Kshatriya, his main propensity was to be a Brahmana. And for Vishwamitra as well, he managed by a lot of tapasya to raise up to that standard. So Prabhupada is here mentioning Yasya Lakshanam Praktam Pumsu Varna Bhiryanjakam. Lakshanam, this is by one who can be defined by its qualities, can be considered pertaining to one Varna or another. So if you are influenced mostly by the modes of goodness and you have naturally the inclination to cultivate knowledge, the absolute truth, then you will naturally end up being a Brahmana. And if we observe someone having these propensities, this proclivity, then we can judge. This one is meant to become a Brahmana. This one is qualified to be a Brahmana. He should act as a Brahmana. Krishna says, Varna Shrama Guna Karma. Chaturyanam Maheshishtam Guna Karma Vibhakasham. So he doesn't say Janma Karma. He doesn't say neither Karma Janma. Janma is not a criterion which is so important. Yet, if you see in the Mahabharata, in Ramayana, in the account of all times, you see that Janma is really important. For example, we had Karna. Karna is dealing with Parashuram. He is considered to be brought up by a Shudra chariot driver, isn't it? And because he was known to belong to that family, even though he was adopted, not even being born, even though he was raised by a Shudra family, he was considered to be a Shudra, even though Karna was displaying Kshatriya qualities. When he came to the contest opened by Dronacharya, Karna was there and he triumphantly arrived and said, I want to test the strength of Arjuna. And Dronacharya says, no, this person cannot become my student and he cannot participate. And similarly, when Parshuram was in the Mahendra mountain, then Karna came to see him and pleaded to become a student. But he lied, because Parshuram would only teach those who were Brahmana. And therefore Parshuram asked, what type of family do you come from? And Karna was saying, I come from a Brahmana background, so you can teach me all the mantras, do archery and so on. So after being taught all the Brahmana mantra, Brahmastras, all the divine weapon of archery, then one day when Parshuram was lying down under a tree, then there were a little insect eating the flesh of Parshuram. No, actually it was, this little insect was eating the flesh of Karna. But because Karna was next to his spiritual master, Parashuram, he didn't want to waking him up. So he tolerated the pain of that little insect eating the flesh and drilling his bones and so on. But at some point there were a drop of blood coming from the wound of Karna, falling on the body of Parashuram, and this awakened him. So he saw his disciple Karna being covered with blood. And Parashuram asked, how can you tolerate such a pain? What is this? It's not the propensity of a Brahmana to tolerate such a pain. You must be a Kshatriya, in fact. So after discovering the truth, Parashuram cursed Karna. All the mantras you have learned, I taught you, you will forget them when you will need them the most. Therefore, when Karna was fighting against Arjuna, then at some point he needed some mantra to counteract and to wipe out the field. And the curse of Parashram was effective, he could not help himself, and because of that, Arjuna took advantage and won the match. So the point is that how is that? Why, if Prabhupada says, if the Shastra says, Narada himself says, if Krishna says himself, Guna Karma, not Janna, why is Vedic society so much judging upon Janma? Have you ever thought about that? We are accustomed to be taught, well, if you have the qualities, then you can become a Brahmana. Prabhupada said, I created Brahmanas. This Krishna consciousness is meant to form people to become the head of society, because in modern societies there is no Brahmanas. So Prabhupada took us from, at least in the West at the beginning, he took many people from even outcast condition, if not at least Shudra, and raised them to the platform of Brahmana, because he was thinking that after a period of 1 year chanting, then the purification of the holy name will bring them to the goodness, and they could be initiated as a Brahmana and be qualified to perform all the Archana Vidhi, or the Panchatra Vidhi. But why, if it's so, why if Prabhupada is aligned with Krishna's description of Varnashram Dharma, why if Narada agrees to that, Mahajan and so on, why if Sadhu Guru Sastra says it's according to Guna and Karma, why is society, Vedic society, so focused on Janma? Did you ever think about that?
Well, the context was different with all these accounts you're saying, like Kali Yuga is a special category, but beside Kali Yuga, because Garbhadan Samskar is like honored, then it's generally the case that anybody born in a certain class, they have the same qualities, which is not the case now.
Yes. Somehow or another, it's considered that the qualities of the parents are to some extent given, exposed to the baby, to the child at the time of conception. So, for example, in Dhruva Maharaj dynasty, there were the king Vena, isn't it? But they wanted to preserve the body of King Vena because he was endowed with some of the potency of Dhruva Maharaj, who was his grandfather. So the sages were thinking, we have to preserve the body of Vena because in this body reside the potency of previous potent people. So this potency could be transmitted from one parent to another, one generation to another. Yet, this potency, these qualities can really exist only if you perform samskars, if you raise properly the child, and if you don't mix caste. Otherwise, then the qualities becomes mixed up. So it was generally really rigid in Vedic society. Most of the time, Kshatriya and Kshatriya were married together, Brahmana and Brahmana together, and so on. So that the dynasty, the quality will be pure and will bring forth better individuals and excellent in their role. So that's why Janma was so important, because they were great leaders, and those great leaders were trying to build a dynasty. This dynasty will hold potency, Brahmanas will have tejas, and they would want to preserve those mystic abilities or those extraordinary qualities. So that was one thing that we have disappeared in Kali Yuga, because there is no sanskar, therefore Kalo Shudro Sambhava. Everybody is considered to be a Shudra in Kali Yuga. Yet, Prabhupada has a solution. The Shastra gives us a solution. Varnashram Dharma is in one way rigid, but in another way it can be as well evolutive. If you place yourself under the care of Varnashram Dharma, then it's more rigid. But if you practice Sanatana Dharma, then there is an evolution, because the potency is there. There is a transcendental potency who can raise Striyo Veshastata Shudras, Epigantim Paramgatim, even those who are low-born, anyone can attain Paramgatim, the ultimate destination. So Bhakti is open to all, which is not the case of all the path propounded by Vedic scriptures. If you need to perform Gayatri, you need to be either from Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya background. If you are not even allowed to study Vedas. There is an account in Ramachandra Mahamayan pastimes that in Ayodhya there were a Shudra who was reciting and studying mantras. And Ramachandra was so displeased with him that he killed him. Yeah. Because even though reciting mantras, Vedic mantras, the Karmakanda mantras and so on, they are purifying in, this is not the duty of a fourth class man. But we are not like that. We are not so rigid because we know the potency of devotion and mantras. We know the potency of the holy name. We know the potency of pure bhakti. Therefore, in our line, in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya especially, we understand that there is a space for evolution, space for further qualification, space for transformation. Because it is said that there is two types of karma, prarabdha, aprarabdha. So one who is manifested, the body, you have it for this life, the conditioning, and one which is aprarabdha for later on. And the process of bhakti is destroying both prarabdha and both aprarabdha. So it says, Hau patas vapachotu gariyan chivagre vartate namatu biham tepusta aste juhul sasnurarya Paramanuchu namagyananti yete, that those who are chanting the holy name, they are so glorious, because even though they come from, they may come from Jvado, from outcast, so outcast background, like flesh eater or even dog eater, then still, by following the process of bhakti and chanting purely the holy name, it is considered that in their past life they have performed all the ceremony of Vedic characteristic Karmakanda, they have visited all places of pilgrimage, they have bathed in all the rivers, they have chanted all the mantras, they have accomplished all the pious activities. Therefore, they have to be worshipped. So this is a proof that by chanting the holy name, then actually, if you chant it purely, you can be elevated to the highest position. It destroys all the influences that a bad birth without samskars can provoke. So one day I asked to Guru Prasad Swami, is Varnashram Dharma meant to be rigid or evolutive for Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya? For example, if I took an example to illustrate that. I told him, for example, if I'm conditioned with a Shudra mentality, and then by practicing bhakti, I awaken goodness. Should I turn into a brahmana or should I stay a shudra? What do you think? What will be your answer?
But the
You say
no, but the, yeah, go ahead.
who will, can you raise your hand? Who will stay a shudra and act accordingly to his original position, conditioned position? Can you raise your hand?
Like you mean by birth?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or who will act as a brahmana if he knows by the process of bhakti he developed this tendency? Can you raise your hand?
I just have confusion because normally we cannot change our nature. I mean, it's already decided from the very beginning what kind of it's not the matter of birth, like whether you are born in a Kshatriya family or a Brahmana family, but the quality, that nature you already have acquired, so there's no question of changing the nature. But if you have realized that you have certain qualities which doesn't belong to your family, then you should go to that, that nature which you are more inclined to.
Yeah, you agree. This is a conception we may have. This is part of the truth, but this is a conception for those who are not practicing pure bhakti or not advanced in pure bhakti. Because Prabhupada says, he says clearly in this purport that we can see that although Vishwamitra was born in a Kshatriya family, by austerities and penance he achieved the position of a Brahmana. This history is confirmed the statement in Shastra that a Brahmana may become a Kshatriya.
There are so many contradictions.
Yes, I know, that's why we are discussing that.
History of Vishwamitra, I mean, he was mixed kind
Yes, that's true. My point, so you want to hear what Guru Prasad Swami told me?
Yeah.
Okay. So Guru Prasad Swami told me, first, you act Brahmanically with Brahmanical qualities in your position. You understand? For example, let's say I have the tendency to be a Shudra. I like engineering. Engineer is to be a Shudra, for example. So I can engage for the Krishna. But while practicing devotional service, then it seems that I become more and more Brahmanical. Maybe I'm a Brahmana. So Prasad Swami told, first you try to be Brahmanical in your activity, in your own sphere. Let's say I'm a Vaishya, by practicing Krishna consciousness, chanting, I become more and more in goodness. Srimvatam Zakata Krishna Punya Surana Kirtanam Vidyantastu Yavadanam Vidunoti Satam, and then Tadarajastamo Bhava Kamalo Badeshte Chetaitana Vidam Stitam Sadme Vasidati. We are supposed to become elevated beyond the lower modes and be established into sattva, and when this sattva is condensed and become pure, we are totally spiritual and transcendental. So, if you really believe in this conception that we are not this body, that Bhakti Yuga, Sagunan Samati Tetan, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, I don't have any influence from the material modes, then we should become transcendental. And we should be able, according to the need, like Prabhupada, to act in a way or another. Prabhupada was a Vaishya, businessman. He was a manager of an internet society. He was a preacher, like a Brahmana. And according to the needs, he will show how to clean the pots for his disciple. Himself, he will clean the pot in Matchless Gift without saying anything for the first week, So he will do everything, but everything is not, he was not a Brahmana Vaishnava, a Kshatriya Vaishnava, a Shudra Vaishnava. He was just a Vaishnava. And Vaishnava is beyond all this Varnashram Dharma. Therefore, he was able to do anything and everything only for Samsiddhi Haritoshana, for the pleasure of Krishna. That was his aim. What you need to do, this Varnashram Dharma is the designation of your birth. But if you practice Krishna consciousness, you are meant to become transcendental to this and act for the pleasure of Krishna. If it's required, you have to do a certain activity categorized as a Varna, a particular Varna, you have to do it if it's required. Let's say build a temple. Let's say, for example, Rasapayana, he needs to build Almira because this is needed for the devotees. Okay. Yes. Then he will do it because he knows that's the need. And if he needs to worship the deities because there is nobody else, he won't say, I'm a Kshatriya by nature. I cannot do this type of work. It goes against my grain. No, he knows, I'm a Vaishnava, I have to please Krishna. This is what the devotees they need, so I will do it. So, it's one consideration. That's the transcendental achievement. But what Guru Prasad Swami told me is that first, before to act like a transcendental person, try to act Brahmanically in your own sphere. Let's say you have a tendency to be a manager, you have a tendency to be a businessman, you have a tendency to be simply a servant of everybody, but do it Brahmanically first. That means fill with goodness your own profession, your own position. And when you will be elevated fully to goodness, then you will know you are transcendental, you can do everything and anything. Because it's true that most of the devotees do not have the qualification to act in any sphere beyond their conditioning. They can do it for a time, but if they do it so long that it gets on their nerves, it gets them stressed, then they become burned and they leave. And for Prabhupada, in discussion about Varna with Satsvarup Maharaj, he said, no need to do false Brahmana. No need to initiate falsely Brahmanas. Otherwise they fall down. Better we install Varnashram Dharma, and then people can find a place where they engage their propensities and they stay in Krishna consciousness. They're just dropping everything together. Because this conditioning, when we start to Krishna consciousness, may stay. And therefore we have this call. I want to do some particular things. I want to be like that. And if we don't engage them, then we may think, okay, this Krishna consciousness movement is not for me at all. So Prabhupada told in one place in the discussion, this movement is meant to transform Grihastha into Brahmana. This movement is meant to create Brahmanas. But if we want to create Brahmanas, Varnashram Dharma is essential. Otherwise, people will fall down. So we have to provide facilities for different type of people because we are not directly transcendental. So that's the answer. It's an answer in two times. Try to become Brahmanical in your own sphere, then gradually you will become so transcendental that you don't need to act according to your birth, your conditioning. This does not matter anymore. You can do whatever is needed for Krishna. Does it sound okay? Or is there any question? Yes, please.
Yes, and that is an interesting point because this is, you see many times misunderstood in ISKCON, devotees. And for example, female Diksha, you can see that in the history that Janavi, Mataji, etc., they were cool, but still they were in their social role.
Yes, that's true.
So this is completely not that what you see nowadays, and for example, preachers, female preachers, who go all around and start to preach to men. They always kept their position in that connection. And you can see that with all these Mahabhagavatas, like and the wife of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. She kept in the role. She was Mahabhagavata. So what you was telling, that you can start to act if you feel you are transcendental. You can see that, for example, Kokishodas, Babaji, all these transcendentalists, they kept one thing always. They kept separate from women. Even that they were completely transcendental. So that is because they play this role to give the example to others. That is the whole point.
Yes.
So even that you are completely free from everything, all these kind of things, still you keep the role. For example, we are in ISKCON and somebody can be completely transcendental and on the Revatinandana platform, but still he keeps the example and goes to the Mangal IT. Not that he starts to do Mangal IT at 1 o'clock in the night, because he's on that platform. So that is very important to understand in this connection, not that he starts to feel himself transcendental and start to act completely on the Paramahamsa platform. So that is, I think, an important thing to understand.
That's why we try to become first Brahmanical in our own position, our own Varna. Because otherwise it may become disruptive. Let's say, for example, I'm chanting my 16 and then I was addicted to alcohol and tobacco and marijuana. I was in Tamagun. Let's say by chanting, then I dropped everything quickly. Then I may start to think, okay, now I'm mostly involved in passion activities. Let me become a Kshatriya, and the day after, let me become a Brahmana. And if every day everybody change in the society of position, then it's really difficult for the society to be settled down. So generally, that's why we advise just first become pure in your own sphere, in your own profession. Then when you are totally transcendental, then you can act beyond those designations and so on. But we understand that Prabhupada, the Sanatana Dharma conclusion is that whatever is needed for Krishna, we should do. So this ingredient is always present. That we are not so strict as per the Vedic Manusmriti rules and so on. So in some place, for example, Prabhupada told the Brahmacharinis and Brahmachari they should not live together. But the Brahmacharinis they need to be maintained. And if they need money, then it's good that some of them they have a work. And if some of them can go in book distribution, even though it's really not advised for women, then let them do if they want to. Like this, they can sustain the whole ashram, they can preach. Even though generally in strict Vedic society, women are not supposed to go and meet men like that, you know. But Prabhupada said it is possible to build Krishna consciousness in the West because time, place, and circumstances were favorable like that. So there is a place for evolution. It's up to our own intelligence to evolve, to recognize where we are, and to not disrupt others.
And I've also to make a point about this. And so it's an important point that we have Shastra, and Prabhupada was acting according to Shastra.
Yes.
So if you see that Prabhupada was acting not according to Shastra, you should understand that it is an emergency situation.
Yes, exactly.
It's a very important point to understand, and we should, as movement, we should come to the point, as the Brahmanas, all the scholars, should come to the point to understand Prabhupada's mood and mission in that connection, and also understand, and already happened in Prabhupada's time himself, that you see many times that, for example, marriage. So he inaugurated marriage, but in 1970, but later he said this nonsense. Yeah, they're forcing, I don't do this anymore. So you can put the thing what Prabhupada started, or this is how Prabhupada did, but you see that he changed also in that connection. So that is very important to see, because Prabhupada moves, and also as disciples and followers of Prabhupada, we should come that Prabhupada introduced this in that sense, but what is the real desire? And it was introduced in the West in that sense, that we as movement, etc., come to the original conclusion and try to implement it.
Yes, yes.
So, for example, that women should be protected. So if some woman have the tendency for preaching, she can do that to Mataji's. So because it is not according to the Vedic system in that sense, and if there are more Prabhuji's, etc., that slowly they will also take the Pujari roles, and that the woman can give example by being a mother and growing up Krishna consciousness children. So that is the best preaching they can do in the ultimately. So that is, and Prabhupada wanted this. So he introduced certain things, but as realized Brahmanas and as realized devotees, we should understand what was Prabhupada's ultimate desire in that sense. So that we come to more and more to that mood and start to see the things, and by his reading his books, etc., that we start to understand. Because, for example, in 1,000 years you cannot get Ritvik out of Prabhupada books. You can read 1,000 years, but there will be Ritvik is not there, and feminism is in. You can read thousands of years about equality, Prabhupada books, but you will not find it. So you can see that are all kind of concoctions by impure material kind of consciousness minds, that they start to introduce this. And then you become asat. You become actually useless because you don't follow the instructions of the founder Acharya. So you start to do your own things. That is what happened with Kadadhar. Advaita Acharya, that ultimately they came to groups. One was following Advaita Acharya, and others they started to speculate. So they became asat. They become useless. And we saw this also with the Kalyavad. So that is very, very important, that we start to see Prabhupada to the Shastra, and in that context, as movement, we continue and we try to put the things actually what Prabhupada wanted. So that was a small thing what came in mind. It's very important as movement. Otherwise, we will end as some Vivekananda organization or Food for Life, welfare organization, etc.
Yes, I see how it is related. Because you say Striyo Vishastata Shudaste Piyantin Paramgati. So among Shudras and Vishya, how Krishna put women as well as a class. So this is related. You take women as a class, and therefore they have their own dharma as well.
Yeah, they have their own psychology, and it is also the best preaching in that sense. If you can make your child Krishna consciousness, that is there is no better preaching in that sense to do.
So if we take, so if we take your discussion today with whether the birth is capital or not.
Yes.
So, but if we take woman as a social position, then that means, anyway, it has implication. It means that definitely birth is determining in this case. You say, I'm born as a woman, so these are all my duties. So that what if you agree to this, then we have to agree that if I'm born Shudra, I will not Shudra. It's the same. Because I have certain quality on my birth. Same. Right? Is it? Am I right? Sorry. We're
Yeah, it's just singularity with a woman that they have their own dharma, and they have also their own philosophical differences. When we talk about Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana,
these are psycho.
yeah, exactly. And then when we talk about different sects, then it becomes philosophical. So it includes more differences. And for those who are really transcendental, they don't mind. Like, let's say we can take Shukadev Goswami. He was wandering naked, and women they were also naked in the river, and both of them they don't mind each other. Not because they saw this is a transcendental personality. He's not looking at us. He's in his world. So in this condition, there is a in the mind of a transcendental person, there may be not distinction, but to keep the society together, the distinction are there, not because they perceive them, but because they see that others, they need to act on that level.
So the duty of devotee then would be to follow the nature he got by his birth, to show the example, according to this.
To some extent, yes. That's why in the Vedic scriptures you see they are really attached to respecting rules and regulation pertaining to their own body and own varna, own ashram. But Bhagavatam is full of counter-example and exception as well. They show that those who are transcendental, they should not be regarded on the same with the same rules and constraint.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, and I agree with both of you. It's a matter of helping the society to function together, and as well in Vaishnava we have the view that we have to be progressive and we can adapt as well according to the need.
Siva Rama writes also about this. There's somebody is coming out of Anatanivriti, comes to slowly to Asakti, and he gets the Svarup, all these kind of things. Still, he plays his role as a normal temple, as a normal. And then his duty is to develop his rasa, etc., all these mellows, all this. But he gives this in privacy. He gives this in privacy. So it still is acting all like a new bhakta is going to the programs, etc., etc. It is how he is explained. So there's also in one sense that he shows, he keeps on showing. For example, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj is coming to every Korhati. Every Korhati. That is to give the example in that sense. That is in ISKCON very important that if everybody is trying to act spontaneous and not come to the programs or do their own things, then it's very difficult for the movement. There's a certain kind of etiquette. The model can be transcendental, mother, but that is to make the child Vaishnava, that is a transcendental quality.
Okay, so on this note, we'll finish. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur,
Hari Haribo!
All goes to the son of the devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Oh my God, Acharya, you dropped the bomb.
Can't help.
You really dropped the bomb, Acharya. You are fearless, huh?